At this point in the tutorials, I want to talk about the order invoice editing screen. Is an editing screen that has more data on it than does the invoice. Let's take a quick look at the invoice to see what that looks like. You go down and look at the order invoice print, and it's a much smaller standard looking invoice where you would put your company information, your logo, and then the information from the index area where we were looking at on the, let's go back to it, order edit. Now I'm going to give you an overview of the actual application of how it is used so that you understand why you would have an invoice like you do and why you're editing it and some other information. First of all, we added the customer information, which is required in order to create the customer information on an invoice. When you select it from drop downs like the name here, and it fills all these fields in. The next thing would be, before you can actually have an invoice and have data in the invoice, you have to create the product inventory. We're going to be covering this separately on that screen, but I'm going to point out the usage and how you're supposed to use the inventory screen. You have to create an inventory. The inventory could be the finished item and the production requirements for that particular item that is being finished. What are production requirements? Production requirements may be the parts, pieces, and materials in order to produce an end item that you're going to be wholesaling, consigning, or retailing. Now, in this particular case, an inventory item or inventory items can include the bits, pieces, and materials that take and are set up to build that product. In the production screen, you're going to be setting up a reoccurring record for each new item that you're building, and you're going to put in or make a duplicate of the same item that creates the record entry for that production item. Each time you build one of these over a period of time, say you could build one today, maybe something a week from now or a month from now or 6 months from now, you're going to get a comparison for trend analysis of what it should have cost to build that product and what materials and labor it takes to put it together. If that's changing over a period of time because the materials are more expensive or labor is more expensive, it will affect your inventory as far as pricing, where you're going to be ordering information or ordering items to put into the production process. So let's go back over now and think a little bit about the order entry for an invoice. Now on the invoice, you have to have the items that are shown here, and I'm going to go down. We entered the data for the invoice for the individual, and that's done by tapping on the information here. And in this case, there would be a list of all of your clients or customers here that you would be provided with, and all you need to do is click on it, and it fills in all the information for that particular client. The next thing you would be doing is you would be picking the product, the end product that you're producing, that you're going to be sending out to the world or consigning or retailing or wholesaling. In that particular case, you would know what that product is. It may be sitting right in front of you, or it's part of a inventory that you're aware of because you're doing the sales in the field and you're using the item. In this particular case, I have some sample things in here. I created a pseudo barcode test where I'm putting in the numbers from 1 to 9 and testing. Then I also have the actual items. For example, I did in this case, I put in a part number for this item here, which is a 3-foot, pardon me, a U.S. flag that's red, white, and blue in 3-foot measurement. Now this could be a fabric one, or it could be a metal art one, or it could be something else that was created, but I'm just putting in a sample information as far as what might be expected in your list. For example, I have down here, I have this part number, and then I have a ship at sea in blue. And that is what you're looking at here in a 3-foot. This is the item that we're looking at here. If you pick it here, what it's going to do, it's going to drop in the description of the item. It's going to drop in the standard list price. You're going to be doing the following. You're going to add the individual item. We're going to be talking about this later. Basically, there's what's called a part ID. In production, you're going to, or I should say the computer is going to assign a individual number during production to each item that you build as an individual item. And if you drop this screen down, you're going to see the items that we're seeing here, the 349 right here. is number 1 in production. As you build more of these, they will build more of a number here that is ahead of the actual 3-4 number. And that would be how many were produced. Each time a new item is produced, it's going to increase that number at the front of this for the part ID. Why would we have a part ID? Well, this is optional, but in some respects, what happens when you are building particular items, they may vary slightly as far as the way they were produced, yet they still have the same part number and they do the same thing as the product that we're looking over here. There may be a variation for some reason. If it's a real retail purchase, somebody may have ordered the item as is with an exceptional thing that they want added to it or changed on it. And that would be the production for that one item, and that would separate them into a part ID category where it would be unique to that one item that was built. Now, this, I say, is optional. You do not have to put in the part ID, even though it's available to you. But I found with wholesaler and sales and retail and consignment that in a lot of cases the items vary. For example, if you're building a ring and you put an amethyst in the ring and you surrounded it with cubit zirconiums, and then the next time you do the cubit zirconium ring you put a topaz in it, yet it still had the same part number or similar part number, you could differentiate those by the part ID. That's quite a bit of information about it, but what it does and what we've learned is that you have to have some of these unique issues covered for any kind of a business that wants to do this kind of production and building of different kinds of items. I had one person that has an Indian reservation where she has people producing items for her at wholesale, and each one of them may be slightly different from one another, but the part ID makes them unique so she can tell the difference for in the inventory as to which one she's actually selling, retailing, or consigning. Okay, let's move on. The order status. The order status in this record is actually got programming behind it. And what that means is if you're doing a retail order up here at the top where you've created the record for the particular customer and they're buying this as a retail order, it could be subject to tax depending on the laws in your state or local area. If it's going to be taxed, then you have to pick the paid tax when they pay for the item. What that's going to do, it's going to trigger the tax calculations at the top of the screen, and then it's going to show you the actual amounts for the different locations for the tax. When the reports are done and run, you'll see this information on the report for the city, county, and state tax if it's pertinent for the area that it's being sold in. It'll also show you the summary price based on the base subtotal with the tax added to it, and then you'll see if it has any balance to be paid, it'll show you the balance paid. Now, in this record, you can actually, because this is different doing this kind of business, each line item may have its own particular status and its own particular character. For example, if I created an invoice and I'm doing consigned items and I'm also delivering wholesale items, they're going to be signed to that location where the person is getting them or selling them in wholesale and they are sold, they're going to get a percentage of that wholesale. So you have to understand the differential between the actual list price and what things are being sold for, and how when you go collect your money for those items, what is going to be returned to you by the wholesaler. For example, if there's 20% off or 10% off or whatever, they're going to give you the 80 or 70% of the value of the item as it is sold. So you have to understand when you're doing an invoice, it also may, as I drop down the list and look at it, you may be doing a consigned item. It may be something as a retail sale where it was paid and there was no tax, or when it's paid and there is tax, it's going to calculate the tax. If it's in a consigned location and it is being returned to inventory, what you're doing is until it actually comes back in and is actually in the storage area where it's located, it would be in the return status. And that would be an individual by line item for an invoice for a date period. And for example, in this date period, this order was created. And if they're all consignment or some are retail and some are wholesale, you need to understand the difference between these items so that you know the proper way to status it. So return would be an item that is coming back and the business to which it is at from consigned is returning it and having something replaced. Now, when you go out as the group that is returning or putting stuff in the customer's location, you're the one that can be changing these and moving them out. Maybe something is not selling in that particular location and you want to return it. If it is sold, you would have the sold on it as far as a retail, and there's paid. Until it is actually paid, the sold would stay on it. And then when it is actually paid back or paid the customer or paid you, then you put paid in. Now, if it's paid without tax, you use paid. If it's paid with tax, then you do paid with tax, which will affect how much you collect when you go to the customer or client location. They should be giving you what they collected for tax and the paid item when there is tax, or they just pay you as a wholesale and they pay you what the difference is minus their discount. So the sold is a temporary status, and stock is something that was returned, and now when it is returned, it is put back into stock, and this is where that product ID comes back in. This is very important because that particular item may have a standard part number, but they may be one to the number of those at a business, or they may be coming from somewhere like a different business, and the same part number is coming back on the same load of stuff coming back to the warehouse. If that number is not included in the barcode or ID of the item on the product, you're not going to be able to differentiate which one is which and where it's coming from. So this gives you the ability to do a further identification of the item as it is returned and put into stock. Okay, let's look up here at the screen up here. You'll see we looked at the different flat amounts that this is city, state, county in here. Then the total of 9% and change is put into the tax rate that is being affected on the actual sale of the item. Now, as a client that you're working with, they need to understand how the taxes are working for their particular location and what they're collecting. That's 9.190 for the item, okay? And if you give them a copy of the invoice or the information that's providing the tax rate based on what they're doing, they should know what they're collecting on it. In this particular case, the sum of the taxes is $22.88 based on what was collected. So that gives you the balance of this information. Now, there's another delta that can be thrown in here. If you allow your locations for your customers to add a discount, they would put in the percent of discount in here. Now, obviously, when they say they, for example, discounted it, you have to give them permission to discount it at a rate of whatever you want to put in there. So we're leaving this available to you to put in some kind of a discount. So for example, if I took a 10% discount, you would see a 10% discount changing and putting a discount amount on this is $24.90, which is going to affect that what they pay with the base price, and then also the tax will change. So you see when you build something and you change the way it's paid, then it's going to change this. But let's see what happens when I say sold without tax. Just say paid. Changes the color, flags this, drops it out, and you see now that when the item is paid, it does not include any tax. There's no tax amount collected. There could be an amount in there for a discount still that'll affect the price, but it's not going to affect it based on the taxes that were collected. This is the what if tax collection, the amount up here, but since you picked paid without tax, there's nothing going to be collected as far as tax is concerned. Now, this is something that you have to deal with as a business owner and how you deal with your different locations. You may want to create a product sheet that you hand out to them either by the report or whatever, or how you want to generate it, that shows the standard list price and a discount amount that they're allowed to take if they do, and then what the final price should be. For example, the line total, subtotal is $224.10 because you deducted it by 10%. In this case, that would change the amount of paid. So what happens is you come over to the amount paid, and it's going to change because it should be $224.10 rather than the $271.80 that we checked out here a little while ago. So that would be $242.10 as the amount in here. Obviously, it's going to show a minus amount because your row sum total is different than the original way we had this set up with the paid and paid tax. Now I'm going to go back in and return it to paid tax. And you can see that it's going to change everything again. As long as I take out the 10%, we're going to return right back to the original way we did this. So you can see you can there's variations on each line and how you actually sell the item or consign it or retail or wholesale. Now, the next thing you're going to be looking at is you have the ability to go to the individual record portal, and there's additional information in that screen. Now, I'm going to break right here as soon as we get done with this line, and we're going to be going back and looking at the portal, what the location is, what the inventory is in there for in the image, and the storage status as far as the storage status is concerned. So let's go ahead and break here, and then we're going to return in the next video and talk about these items on this row. Thank you.